If you've ever stared out at a small, empty balcony and wished for a lush fruit garden but thought, well, I just don't have the space, think again. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're completely bypassing those sprawling backyard gardens and unlocking the exact secrets to growing sweet, juicy strawberries using nothing but containers and the space you literally already have.
But first, a quick fun fact that always seems to catch people off guard. Did you know strawberries aren't actually technically berries? Crazy, right? By botanical definition, a true berry has its seeds on the inside. But, while they might not make the strict botanical cut, they are absolutely the perfect beginner project for container gardening. They've got shallow roots, they respond incredibly well to just a little bit of good care, and they give you fruit really fast.
So, to take you from an absolute beginner to a super confident balcony gardener, we're going to follow 6 logical steps today. We'll cover choosing your varieties, grabbing your essential materials, the actual planting process, day-to-day care, how to maximize your yield, and finally, troubleshooting some common issues.
Okay, let's jump right into section 1, choosing varieties. Because, look, before you buy a single pot or a bag of dirt, you've got to pick the right plant. You essentially have 2 main paths you can take here, day neutral or June bearing. Now, June-bearing plants, they give you one massive harvest all at once. That is great if you're making a giant batch of jam, but honestly, it's way better suited for large in-ground gardens. If you're looking for a steady supply of fresh strawberries for your morning cereal all summer long on your balcony, you absolutely want day-neutral or ever-bearing varieties. Think types like Ozark Beauty or Albion. They're literally genetically wired to produce fruit continuously, making them the ultimate choice for container life.
Moving on to section 2, essential materials. Let's build out your gear checklist before we get our hands dirty.
So there are quite a few options out there for containers, and each one comes with a trade-off. Plastic is super lightweight and holds moisture great, but dark plastic can actually bake your plant's roots in the summer sun. Terracotta looks beautiful and breathes really well, but the catch is it dries out incredibly fast and can literally crack and flake during winter freezes. Then you have fabric grow bags. These are incredible for preventing root rot because they essentially air prune the roots, meaning the roots stop growing when they hit the open air. But you will be watering them a lot more often. Whichever route you take, the absolute non-negotiable rule here is that your container must be 8 to 10 inches deep and have plenty of drainage holes. No exceptions.
Now for the soil, and this is crucial. Please do not use heavy garden soil in your containers. Garden soil gets super compacted in pots, and it will literally suffocate those poor strawberry roots. Instead, you're looking for a lightweight premium potting mix. If you want to mix it yourself, here is your perfect little shopping list. You'll need peat moss or coco coir for moisture retention, some composted pine bark and granite sand or perlite for drainage, and a slow-release 10-10-10 fertilizer. Strawberries actually love just a little bit of acidity, so you're aiming for a pH between 5.5 and 6.8. This specific combo gives them the exact drainage and nutrients they are craving.
All right, section 3, the planting process. Pay attention, because this right here is the make or break moment for your entire strawberry project.
Identifying the crown of the plant is without a doubt the single most critical piece of knowledge for any beginner. The crown is simply that knobby little junction point right where the leafy green stems shoot up and the stringy roots reach down. To really understand why this crown matters so much, we have a great quote from Mark Bolt at Earthbox. He says, "Good drainage is the foundation. Strawberries don't tolerate wet feet, and crown rot can wipe out a container fast. If you bury that crown under the soil, it just traps moisture right up against the stems, the plant rots, and honestly, it's game over. The crown absolutely must sit right above the soil line, totally exposed to the air."
So, how does that translate to the actual planting? It's easy. First, fill your container most of the way up with that premium potting mix. Second, place your plant so the crown sits perfectly above the soil line. Third, very carefully backfill the soil around those dangling roots, making absolutely sure you don't bury the crown. Finally, just firm the soil down gently, leaving about a 1-inch gap right beneath the rim of the pot. That little gap just makes watering so much easier later on. It's a super simple process, but honoring that golden rule of the crown changes everything.
Okay, so your plants are happily in the dirt. Let's move into section 4, day-to-day care, to make sure they stay thriving.
8 hours, that is the magic number for sunlight here. Your new strawberry plants need 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight every single day. Sunlight is literally what the plant uses to produce sugars, so if you want sweet berries, you've got to give them sunshine. Go ahead and claim the absolute sunniest spot on your entire balcony for these guys.
They also need about 1 to 1.5 inches of water every week. But wait, don't just blindly pour water on them on a schedule. You want to use the finger test. Just stick your finger about 1 inch into the soil. If it feels dry to the touch, water it. If it's still moist, just hold off. You are aiming for evenly moist soil, never a soggy swamp. Now, here's a really fascinating quirk about these plants. If the temperature spikes up over 85 degrees Fahrenheit, those day-neutral strawberries will actually just stop flowering entirely. The roots simply get way too hot sitting in those containers. So if you live in a really hot climate, our sources shared a brilliant little hack. Just wrap your pots in reflective aluminum foil during heat waves. It literally bounces the sun's harsh rays right away, keeps the roots nice and cool, and keeps your plant happily producing.
On to Section 5. Maximizing yield. Let's talk about some advanced strategies to get the absolute biggest harvest possible out of your small space.
So, strawberries are what we call heavy feeders, especially when they're confined to pots. You're going to want to apply a liquid fertilizer every 3 to 4 weeks, specifically one that's high in phosphorus, which really encourages blooming. Next up is a tip that I know sounds completely crazy, but it absolutely works. You need to pinch off the early flowers in the first year. Yep, snip them right off. By sacrificing those very first blooms, the plant gets tricked into redirecting all that energy into building a massive, strong root system instead, and that leads to huge, continuous harvests later on. Also, make sure to snip off any excess runners. You know, those long vine-like offshoots. You want the plant putting its precious energy into making berries, not making babies, right?
Even the very best gardeners out there face some challenges. So let's look at Section 6, troubleshooting pests and the elements. Look, if you grow food outdoors, the local wildlife is eventually going to want a taste. Our sources from the Mike's Backyard Nursery community shared some of their own epic battles and some honestly brilliant, cheap hacks to win them. Standard netting is great for birds, sure, but a much cheaper alternative is actually using tulle. Yes, like the fabric used for wedding veils. It's incredibly cheap, it comes in all sorts of fun colors, and it does a phenomenal job of keeping pests off. If you happen to live near the coast, try stringing some monofilament fishing line back and forth across your pots. It completely confuses flying seagulls. And while plastic owls can definitely scare away some rodents, just be warned, several very frustrated gardeners noted that determined squirrels might just end up using your highly intimidating fake owl as their own personal climbing gym. Now, to ensure your plants actually survive the winter and absolutely explode with growth next year, our sources shared this really cool expert 4-stage method straight from gardeners over in Bulgaria. In late fall, you do this. First, prune and clean away all the dead leaves. Second, give them one last autumn feeding. Third, apply a preventative treatment against any overwintering pests or fungi. And finally, heavily mulch the top and cover the containers to insulate them against those brutal freeze-thaw cycles.
Real quick, as we wrap up this explainer, I do need to remind you to always account for your specific regional climate. Obviously, what works perfectly in sunny California might need some serious adjusting in snowy Michigan. Always consult with your local gardening experts or extension offices for hyper-local advice. And of course, follow all the standard safety guidelines when handling gardening tools and fertilizers.
Well, that brings us to our final thought for the day. Take a look at that balcony. Look at that empty space. You now know exactly how to pick the right day-neutral varieties, how to mix the perfect soil, how to position that crown perfectly, and how to care for them through the blazing heat and the freezing winter. So, are you ready to turn that empty balcony space into your own personal berry patch? Grab a pot, go find some sunshine, and get planting. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and happy gardening.